Hi, so this is Miss Murphy, and I will be talking to you today about government and economy of Kenya. You're going to see that there are some similarities, but definitely some differences between Kenya and what we talked about already with Nigeria. So first of all, the two biggest things to know about the government of Kenya is that it is a presidential democracy and that its citizen participation is considered democratic. So these first two bullet points are going to be the most important thing to know when it comes to Kenya. Now you're going to notice that I have republic and democratic in quotes. So why is that? You're going to see that there's some qualities about it, certain things about it that technically don't make it a true democracy, because in a true democracy, all people have equal rights, all people are able to participate, and you're going to see that's not necessarily the case in Kenya. Just a little bit of some background before we move on, though. Just a reminder, Kenya, remember, was colonized by Great Britain, but unlike Nigeria, they had a very violent independence movement that was led by the Mau Mau. And because of this, they were able to become independent, and they broke free from Great Britain. Due to some power and control issues, over the years there's been kind of some flipping and flopping between different types of democracies, presidential, parliamentary, and so now they're technically a presidential democracy, but you're going to see that even though Kenya is in fact considered a presidential democracy, meaning its leader is a president, it does have some qualities that make it a parliamentary system as well. But for all intents and purposes, Kenya is a presidential democracy. So most important things to know for head of state or head of government, or who is the leader, these first two bullet points. The leader of this presidential system in Kenya is the president. He is elected by the National Assembly for a 5-year term. So already off the bat, you know this looks a little bit different. Instead of the president being, instead of the president being elected directly by the people, the president instead is elected by the National Assembly. So this kind of already seems a little bit like a parliamentary system, but again, still considered a presidential system. So the head of the government is the president, and even though it's a presidential system, he is in fact elected by the National Assembly. So in this case, the people vote for the National Assembly, and then the National Assembly chooses the president. So it's presidential system in name, but it's got that parliamentary action going on with it. Fun fact, though, the current president of Kenya is Uhuru Kenyatta, and he is the son of the very first leader of independent Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. So this is Uhuru Kenyatta right here, and he's the son of the guy who was a part of the independence movement. He was one of the nationalist leaders with the Mau Mau. So cool thing is, like, his dad was a leader, now he is a leader. So it's cool little fun fact. So the legislature, the lawmaking body. So one similarity we already see, it's a two-house system. It's bicameral. There's two parts of it, the National Assembly and the Senate. So again, the biggest differences, though, is instead of, in this case, having where the legislature has its own separate election from the president, it's all at the same time. But it, again, even though it's like this, it's still technically considered a presidential system. I know it's complicated. I know it's weird. But, it's unfortunately sometimes when it comes to presidential systems and parliamentary systems, it's all fine and dandy and seems pretty straightforward in theory, but sometimes when it's put into place and reality, it gets a little messy, and that's just how it is sometimes, and that's okay. But the biggest things to know about legislature are this first bullet point and this third bullet point. Just the fact that it's bicameral, there's two houses, that work together to make the laws in this legislature, and the National Assembly is actually the group of people who are responsible for voting for the president. Okay? So voting rights and freedoms, this is touching into what I was kind of bringing up before about the fact that there's parts of it that are not truly democracy worthy. The big thing, though, is this first bullet point and this third bullet point. Now, this part right here seems very similar to how it is here in the United States and what we saw in Nigeria. Any and all citizens over the age of 18 years old can vote and they can participate in the government. And there are, in fact, some freedoms guaranteed in the Constitution. Again, seems very familiar to us, very similar to what we have here. However, the president still dominates the government, meaning there is some room for improvement, and there has been some improvement, but there have been moments where a lot of people feel the president's role has a little too much power, almost to the point where some people have wondered if it seems a little too much power for the president, considering, the legislature and the president need to work together to make the laws. For example, one way that the president still dominates the government in Kenya is that he or she can restrict rights of people if necessary. For example, recently, there have been some conflicts and some issues with Somalia and other neighboring countries. So the president, for a while, kind of banned negative and criticizing speech against the government. And also, he had where people were kind of monitoring large groups of people, limiting movement, limiting organizing large groups of people all at the same time. That's just the way it was. And unfortunately, that's kind of been something that's been a source of controversy and kind of like, well, this doesn't really seem to be what a democracy should look like. But again, it's been some improvement since when it first started, but there's still room to grow. Now, the biggest thing that I want you to take away when it comes to disease, and this is, again, touching back to what we talked about with Nigeria, but also you're going to be seeing this with South Africa too. And for all intents and purposes, focus on this second bullet point. In Nigeria, we were seeing that due to just unequal focus and prioritizing needs in Nigeria, it led to HIV/AIDS being a really big issue in Nigeria. In Kenya, while HIV/AIDS is an issue, it's not nearly as bad as the higher risk of infectious disease. Now, these infectious diseases include any and all diseases that are spread through contaminated food and water. So why is that a government issue? Well, the government usually, when it comes to food and water things, they're usually the ones who are responsible for kind of supervising and facilitating and creating systems to make sure water's clean, that there's even running water provided, like infrastructure. Infrastructure not only includes roadways, but it also includes water treatment systems, water pipelines. It includes sanitation systems. It includes also like food and drug administrations. So all of these different things, if you've got a country that has a history of trying to resolve other conflicts, for example, civil war, corrupt governments, sometimes these issues like clean water, clean food provisions can be put on the back burner because the main focus is, hey, let's resolve our internal government issues first before we focus on other things. And it happens. Unfortunately, you're going to see that oftentimes when countries are trying to become better and stronger governments, unfortunately, some of these other issues get put on the back burner. And you'll particularly see that when it comes to South Africa after apartheid. So, as you can probably imagine with it being a presidential democracy, this first bullet point is the most important thing to know when it comes to the economic system. The economy of Kenya is mixed but mostly market, with some government control. As you know, there's no such thing as full market or full command, but this is mixed but mostly market. The government has been encouraging people to participate in the economy, create businesses, have a say, and also just try to encourage development. It is a growing economy. For the longest time, it was focused on agriculture or farming, but now it's becoming a very big center for finance, for communication, and transportation. So that's really big. It's growing, and particularly it's becoming big for these things in Eastern and Central Africa. But again, most important takeaway, it is mixed, but mostly market. Now, what do they produce? What are the products that they make the most money off of? What is it that they're known for? This is the first bullet point. Big focus, big takeaway, this first bullet point right here. Chances are when you've been to Starbucks or you've been to any store, you would have seen tea and coffee. A large percentage of these goods come from Kenya. You can even see right here, Starbucks has even been marketing specific products from Kenya, coffee from there. Not only is Kenya known for tea and coffee, but also agriculture products or farming goods such as fruits, vegetables, all of those types of things, but also small scale consumer projects. That means small things that you could buy from Walmart, Kroger, wherever. It can be something like batteries, clothing, soap, cigarettes, even soda bottles, anything that you could probably get in a package or can be found in Kroger or Walmart. Chances are you would probably find it there. Known for these things. Also, this picture right here, it's showing women harvesting tea leaves. So just to kind of give you a look at what that process kind of looks like. Now, human capital, just a reminder, human capital is the training and the education that a government invests in its population. How well do they do with that? How well do they make sure everyone has an investment and access to education? So honestly, the biggest things you need to take away from this are first bullet point and the third bullet point. So first of all, they do invest heavily in skills and education for agriculture and agriculture products, meaning farming is the biggest thing they want to make sure everyone is trained and prepared for. They've got to know how to farm. They got to know how to be a part of the tea and the coffee industry. Now, however, there is a shift. Remember at the beginning when we were talking about the economy, you were noticing that there's like some they're trying to get more into the financial industry, the communication industry. They're trying to make it a little bit more modern. And you can imagine since that's the case, a lot of people are trying to move to the city. So what you're going to see as a result is this 40% unemployment rate. The employment rate comes from people trying to move to the cities to take advantage of these new jobs, but also because unfortunately, when you're in a society that's very much based on agriculture or farming, that's going to be based on seasons. If you own your own farm, obviously that's going to be a year-round thing. But if you're working at a farm, you're not going to be needed year-round. You're only going to be needed for certain seasons for certain parts of the year. So that's something that's been a current issue, is just adapting to these changes and trying to have where Kenya is like evolving and becoming more of a modern society that focuses mostly on technology and other things while trying to still have some investment in agriculture and farming. So capital goods. Capital goods are not the training. These are the tools. Capital goods are the tools, the equipment, and the machinery. And as you can see here, they definitely make sure that they have invested in tools, equipment, particularly for agriculture or farming. Obviously, if you are running the coffee and tea industry, you're going to want to focus on that. That's going to be a top priority, focusing on agriculture and manufacturing. That's going to be the biggest thing. If you're making stuff for other countries and that's your moneymaker, you're going to want to make sure you got the latest, the greatest, and the best technology for these things. All right? Because if you're having to deal with old machines and it's breaking all the time, it's going to mess up your final product. It's also going to mean you're not going to be making money. You're going to be losing money trying to fix all these things. So that's why it's so important to have the latest, the greatest, and the best when it comes to these resources. All right. So, GDP.